Hotep, Alafia, Kamusta. Welcome to the Mind of Ro page. I am Yaya Reinha Das Kavedas. I am an Ianifa and a Yaya in Kambanda, and today I'm going to talk to you about trauma bonding. So the last video I made was I wrote a little bit of poetry on walking with death. So if you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Mind of Ro. I also have a TikTok and an Instagram at Mind of Ro. And if you haven't noticed already, I've actually got rid of my Facebook page. I'm never on Facebook anymore. So if you've been looking for me on my Facebook page, this is a new video letting you know that I'm not really on there. So if you want to get a hold of me and you want to message me, then Instagram is going to be the best place to shoot me a message, okay? So I also do readings. If you would like to get a reading done, go ahead and just find me on Instagram, shoot me a message and let me know and set an appointment up with me. So before I get started, let's do the basics. Obviously, is what is trauma bonding. So basically, trauma bonding is when you feel like you're in a toxic situation, but yet you feel like you're still being pulled to it regardless. Okay, which obviously opposite of toxic bonding is when you know it's not a toxic situation and you feel like you're being propelled from it. So that's actually what happens when you're used to trauma bonding. So this is going to be a great subject because well, I haven't made a live video in a while. I've just been busy. I got cold for a little bit. I didn't want to be coughing all over my video. I like my live videos and stuff. And I just got initiated not too long ago, so I'm still kind of adapting to that energy. And I've been traveling a little bit. So I have not made a live video in a while, so I'm actually really excited to be back in live again. So I kind of miss it. It gives me a high a little bit to talk to people on the internet and stuff like that live. So back to it. I'm gonna get back to doing my regular live videos again. All right, so I'm gonna give you guys 5 red flags you might be trauma bonding, and then I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to stop trauma bonding. So number 1 red flag is the obvious physical abuse, like physical, mental, emotional abuse. So obviously if your partner is hitting you, putting their hands on you, if they're constantly putting you down, calling you names, constantly playing with your emotions and stuff like that, then obviously these are plain red flags that you're in a situation that you should not be in, but yet for some reason you feel like you want to be pulled to that. So my answer to why would you want to be pulled to something knowing that you're being abused is typically if we grew up with a physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive parent, we tend to like to date our parents. And it sucks that a lot of us don't want to admit that, but sadly that's actually how we are. If your mother or father was mentally, emotionally abusive to you, we tend to get pulled towards people who have those traits. To my understanding, to my self-evaluation, I cannot say why everybody else does it, but I grew up in a very abusive household. My mother was very abusive to me growing up, and I've evaluated my own personal thoughts and, well, why would I want to be with somebody who abused me, who's abusing me in any way, and find love in that, and when I evaluated myself on that, the reason why I feel like I used to do that, I don't do it anymore, but how I used to do it when I was younger, was because we believe that's love. So like if somebody's not constantly abusing you, if somebody's not constantly angry with you, or if somebody's not constantly criticizing you, then they must not love you. As for some reason we feel like that's caring to us. Well, if someone's not constantly correcting us, if someone's not constantly abusing us in any way, then they must not care. And that comes from trauma bonding, is we feel like that's what love looks like, therefore we will seek that in other people. Another idea that I realized, so my mom passed away in 2008, and I realized I actually ended up dating a very abusive person after she passed away. And I realized, and I asked myself after we broke up, and I was like, well, why would I be in a situation like that when I know better? than that. It was because he had traits like my mother. And I had this weird idea as a healer, like, well, what if I love this person's faults that remind me of my mom, and I heal him, then it'll validate my love for my mother. For some reason, I had this weird thought that if I healed him, then it was almost like healing the spirit in my mother, you know? So I would validate my reasons to stay in an abusive relationship with somebody that reminded me of the abusive nature that my mother had. So I'm not saying that this is everyone's scenario, but I mean, I'm just saying that because that's my personal experience. So these are things to pick up on and really like ask yourself when you are realizing that you're trauma bonding with somebody and that you know the person you're with is very abusive to you, and you're constantly feeling emotionally distraught, or you're constantly feeling they're obviously hitting you all the time, or they're constantly, you know, doing something to hurt you, to say things to hurt you, to say things to put you down, but yet you feel drawn to them. These are things you got to ask yourself during those times of trauma bonding, of why am I feeling bonded to this abusive behavior. So my next one is codependent behavior is a red flag you're trauma bonding. For example, this happens a lot, parent-child relationships, as in one person in the romantic relationship acts like a parent and the other one acts like a child, which means one of them in the relationship feels like they can't take care of themselves, they can't hold a job, they can't keep a roof over their head, they just can't get their life together, whatever the situation is. And so what they'll do, people like this, they'll do is they'll find somebody that will take care of them and constantly give them money, constantly make sure they keep a roof over their head, make sure that they have everything that they need in life because they can't provide it themselves. What they'll do is they'll find another person who wants to be needed. So then the parent-minded person will be a person who feels like, I'm not validated unless somebody constantly needs me all the time. If nobody needs me, then I am not worthy, then I am a worthless person, then why am I alive? So what these people will do is they'll find somebody who constantly needs them, who need them somehow, some way. And then when these two people get together, it becomes very codependent. And it becomes very hard for them to separate, because obviously one person is taking care of the other person, one person can't sufficiently take care of themselves, and the other person obviously can't mentally cope with themselves or emotionally be independent without that other person validating their need of existence, if you know what I'm saying. So these are some red flags for codependent behaviors in trauma bonding. Another one is emotional neediness, constantly needing validation all the time, constantly, do you want to be with me, do you want me, what are you doing, are you cheating on me, are you this, are you doing that, or are you stuff like that. Kind of like you're not allowed to go out if you're not, or you get scared if the person you're with goes out without you. This is red flag in a codependent relationship. Fearful if that person goes out without you, you're gonna lose them, or something's going to happen and you freak out or something like that. You can't travel without them, you can't do anything without them because you feel like something's going to happen to mess up your relationship with that person. So what it does is it creates like this codependent, like, oh my god, don't let go of me, I have to call you, I know what you're doing all day every day. If you constantly have to always talk to the person you're with all day every day to check on them, see how they're doing, and always validating whatever it is that you need to validate within yourself, then this is definitely a red flag that you are dealing with a codependent relationship and you're dealing with trauma. This is trauma bonding, which is another kind of concept of the last concept that I said. Well, one person constantly needs to hold on and validate their self, but when you're validating yourself, you're actually validating that other person, that they're needed all the time. So usually if a person is dealing with a needy person and they like needy people, it is because they want to feel needed and they want to feel like someone's always grabbing at them and pulling on them all the time. And if they don't feel that from somebody, then they feel like they're incomplete and they feel like they're not wanted or needed. So they'll subconsciously attract a needy person to them, which is trauma bonding. So both of them constantly are needing that behavior from each other, and it's hard for them to pull away from each other when that's not being fulfilled in either party. So as I'm going on with these steps, please understand it's never one-sided. It takes two to tango. It's never one person always doing it and the other person not doing it. And if you believe that, that's probably because you're used to trauma bonding, where you're convinced that everything is always your fault, or you're convinced that everything is always them, or you're convinced that one person's always pulling, one person's always pushing, one person is always in control, one person is always submitting. Whatever it is, it should definitely be a lot more equal. My next one, number 3, is my next step I'm going to go to right now is you feel like it's not equal. A red flag you're dealing with trauma bonding is one person always has their thumb over the other person, which basically means that one person is always better than the other person. As in, one person is always smarter, one person is always more talented, one person always has the most money, one person always, like sometimes it would happen when one person has a car and the other person doesn't have the car, so one person with the car has the power, or one person owns the house, or one person owns the home and the other person doesn't, and that person will try to control the other person with the home or with the car, or that person with the money will try to control the person with the money, or the person will try to control them with a whatever it is that they want to control them with. It could be age, it could be title, it could be sex, you know. Well, I'm a female and females are in power. I'm a man and therefore I should be in power. Whatever the situation, or I'm older, therefore I should be in power. These concepts is obviously very delusional. Everybody has their best. Everybody has whatever it is that they're best at and they're great at, and everybody has aspects to them that they're not great at, and it should always be equal. And in relationships, you should always understand that one person is providing something to the relationship just like another person is providing as well. And when there's an unequal aspect going on, that's a sign that it's a trauma bonding story going on, because it becomes like some kind of power trip and submissive thing going on, where one person has to have the power, the other person should submit to some kind of concept, and it should not be like that. Both of you should have your own willpower when you were in a relationship with somebody. When I say relationship, I'm not talking about romance. It could be friends, it could be family, it could be co-workers, whatever it is. It doesn't always have to be romantic. Any relationship you have in your life could be codependent. It could be based off trauma bonding. So just know that when I say the word relationship, it does not always mean romantic. It could be anything. It could be friends, it could be business partnership, whatever it is. My next one is obviously this one is off more romantic. Your relationships are based off sex and nothing else. This is called trauma bonding. And I'm going to mention this really quick. I'm going to get more in depth into this in another video on the concept of the emotional body and how you cannot separate your emotional body from your sexual acts, and how you cannot separate your emotional body from your body, your physical body, and from your mind, body, and soul. You just can't. It's part of it. So that being said, relationships that are based off sex only and nothing else is called trauma bonding. It's an addiction, and it's no different than running to drugs. It's no different to running to alcoholism. It's no different than running to gambling, to try to cover up whatever emotional need or void that you have and using it as an avoidance somehow, some way. So if you are with somebody and the only bond you have with them is sexual, and you feel like there's nothing else about them that's good for you, as in they're toxic, you guys argue all the freaking time, you guys don't understand each other, you guys don't have anything in common, you guys just don't get along in general, whatever the issue is, and you feel like the only reason, or you guys are just still, you know, messing around with other people and seeing other people, and the only time you really meet up is because you know it's about sex, then clearly that's called trauma bonding. Because at the end of the day, any relationship is a relationship, and it should be in harmony. The quality of your relationship, or the quality of your life, is based off the quality of your relationships. Therefore, if the relationships in your life are not healthy, then the relationship with yourself is not healthy. So trauma bonding in regards to trauma sex bonding is going to be just as toxic as trauma bonding with alcohol, trauma bonding with drugs, trauma bonding with gambling, because what it is, and it's an avoidance, and what it does is it actually convinces you that you can disconnect from your emotional body when you can't. It could create some numbness in you and create a cycle, which I'm about to get into this in my next step. The reason why I'm bringing up cycles is because that's going to be step number 5, and it creates a bad cycle of doing things to fill voids, that is to avoid what's actually going on within you, instead of actually facing what's going on and dealing with it and changing it and working on it. And that's what a sex relationship does, is it creates a cycle of erase the problems that I had all week, erase the issues I had with my parents, erase the issues that I had with my past relationships by sexually trauma bonding with somebody to cover it up so I can orgasm and then have that rush, and then forget about it, be in a good mood, a high for a little bit. It's like doing coke or eating a bunch of candy, and then go on with my life and realize all that crap comes back to me again, try to do it again, and then realize it's not working. And a cycle, which is trauma bonding cycle, which is my next step. Number 5 is red flag. You're dealing with trauma bonding is you're stuck in a cycle, and no matter what you do, you feel like you can't get out, and you know you're stuck in a cycle. You know that there's something toxic going on with your relationship. It could be with a parent, it could be a friend, whoever it is, and it just keeps happening over again. And no matter what you say, no matter what happens, no matter what that person say, whatever the scenario is, it just, you feel like it keeps happening over and over and over again. For example, constantly fighting with somebody, then making up. Or like there was a situation where I was with somebody before, and he liked to fight and argue and break up every month. It was so stressful. Okay, fighting, breaking up, getting back together, fighting, breaking up, getting back together, fighting, breaking up, getting back together. Toxic situation. If you're doing that with somebody, that is toxic. That is obviously called trauma bonding. It's some kind of weird thing where it's like, oh, as long as we keep breaking up and getting back together, it's like a weird like high and low rush or something like that. Let's get all our aggressions out and take all our pain on each other, and then make up for it to get that high. Oh, we made up for it, now we're happy, and then go off and do it again. Instead of actually fixing the problem, taking aggressions out in each other, using getting back together as a high instead of actually changing the cycle. Another one is one person is giving a lot more than the other person. One person is trying a lot more and the other person isn't trying at all. One person is always trying to throw theirself and give theirself, while the other person is like whatever. One person is always giving money, while the other person is taking money. One person is super affectionate while the other person is standoffish. Whatever the situation is, it's called trauma bonding. It's one way. One person is always trying to contact the other person, and the other person is never trying to contact the other person. It's like a weird chase. Well, I understand it is, you know, in life, especially when it comes to romance, there should be some kind of balance of chase because it's fun and stuff like that. But when it becomes very, when it starts to lean over to one side all the way, where it's like one person is getting everything, or one person is taking everything and the other person is giving constantly, then that's a toxic situation. It's very imbalanced. That's a red flag, obviously, that you're in a situation that has to do with trauma bonding. So what I like to say to myself when it comes to chakra meditations or chakra affirmations, if you're stuck in a situation like that, is I like to give and receive love in equal portions, which means it's okay to give love, but if you feel like you're giving and that person isn't giving back, then it's time to stop. Then it's time to, calm it down and wait for that person to give back. And that's my personal rules that I like to do. If you feel like you are not getting any love, then you may need to ask yourself, are you giving love out? We need to give and receive love in equal portions, not always give and not always take all the time. My next one is another sign you're stuck in a toxic cycle is substance abuse. I've seen a lot of couples that bond over alcohol, coke, tweak, pills, whatever it is. All clearly that's a toxic cycle. If the only reason you two are together is to bond on alcoholism, is to bond on drugs, is to bond on anything that's considered an addictive behavior, pornography, gambling, overly shopping, wasting money on things, stuff like that, clearly you're stuck in a cycle, and that's called trauma bonding, because both of you are trying to fill voids, and both of you are using that fill to bond with each other when both of you are obviously avoiding something and you're trying to avoid it together, which can seem so romantic and sweet, but at the end of the day, it's called trauma bonding, and it's toxic, and both of you are destroying each other, okay? Next one is we're stuck in a cycle is not speaking about an issue and then blowing up on it later on. This is very common in all relationships, okay, that aren't even romantic. And how people get stuck in a cycle is because you see something that's bothering you with the other person doing something that's bothering you, and you're scared to speak on it, and you're scared. Maybe you don't want to lose the other person. Maybe you're scared of confrontation. You're scared of arguments. You're scared whatever it is that you're fearful of. Therefore, you don't say anything. But then it gets bottled up so much in the inside, and the heat starts boiling, and all of a sudden the pot in you just boils over, and you blow up later on, and it's a giant argument. And the other person is like, what happened, and why are you freaking out, and why this and why that, and then they're like, why are you talking about something that happened way a long time ago, when it's like you should have talked about it back when it happened. So there's a good affirmation I like to speak on, which is, I feel comfortable speaking on my feelings as they arrive. And that's a good affirmation to use if you're the type of person who's scared to speak on your feelings as they arise, because sometimes we doubt them, and sometimes we're scared of them, or sometimes we're jerks, whatever the situation is. If you do have a feeling about something, then you should definitely speak on it when the feeling arises, to get clarity on it so you don't blow up later on the situation. Now if you're a type of person who has a lot of shadow work to do and stuff like that, then take the time to do the shadow work. Take the time to evaluate your own emotions. And are you just triggering because it reminds you of a past situation, or is it really something that's realistic that needs to be spoken on? But it's good to evaluate those things as it happens and as it rises up within at least a few days, and not wait till months goes by and you have the same thought repeating in your head over and over again, haunting you, and then later on you blow up. And then you guys make up and have sex and everything's happy again, and then you guys get along, and then the cycle happens again where that person does something that you don't like, you don't speak on it for months, and then you blow up again, and the cycle happens again. This is the most common cycle that happens in relationships, is not speaking and fixing issues as it arises in the beginning. We wait too long, or we become a little too submissive, where it's like we ignore it because we tell ourselves, well, I don't want to speak on it because I don't want to ruffle up my partner's feathers, or because I don't want to, disturb the peace or whatever like that. I want to keep the peace or whatever, but then later on you're actually miserable when you're not happy. So it's always good to speak up on issues. Obviously, don't cuss people out, you know, but usually that happens if you're waiting too long to speak up on your issues. If you wait 6 months later to finally speak up on your issues, chances are by the time it comes out, you're going to cuss out that person, call them all types of names, and then you're going to be the abusive person. Then you're going to be the person who's doing the mental, emotional, physical abuse because you held your tongue for too long. So those are major red flags if you are either stuck in this toxic cycle or that you're trauma bonding with somebody. So now that you know the red flags of trauma bonding, how do you stop trauma bonding? And number one, first of all, you got to notice the red flags and the gut feelings from the beginning. Doesn't mean you need to act right away and say, screw you, I'm going to bounce. No, not necessarily. It just means to not ignore red flags and correct it. Like I said, my last step was speaking on an issue right away. In the beginning, when you notice red flags and you notice your gut saying, this isn't right, there's something going on, I've seen this before, whatever it is, then you need to speak on it. That's how you avoid trauma bonding, is keeping that trauma bond from happening in the first place. The reason why trauma bonding is so hard to break off of and break free from is because you allowed it to happen for a while. You've seen it and you ignored it and you did it anyways, and you just kept going on and on with it, and then you get stuck in something. You're like, how did I even get stuck in this? Why? Because you ignored the red flags. You knew that person was lying to you, and you knew that person was cheating on you, you knew that person was stealing from you, you knew that person was emotional and mentally abusive, whatever the case was, and you ignored it and you allowed it to happen for too long, and that's your fault. So a lot of times we like to play victim and we say, oh, this person's doing this and this and this to me. Yeah, that's messed up. But at the end of the day, if it's your life, you have a choice to say, hey, I don't want this for myself. We're going to stop this right now. And I set boundaries, you know, and either that person wants to respect your boundary or they don't. You know, but the only way you're going to know is if you recognize it and speak on it and bring it up in the beginning and say, this is my boundary. I do not like this. I do not want this. You know, and if you don't speak on those boundaries, and that person's just going to do whatever, and then you're going to feel like a victim. You're like, I can't believe this person played me. I can't believe this person did this to me or did this, that to me or whatever. But you knew about the red flags in the beginning and you didn't say anything, and you allowed it to keep going and going and going and going and going. So we need to take accountability in that, you know. We need to also take accountability in listening to somebody else telling us those things, letting us know, hey, you got some red flags, either because I'm misunderstanding you or because you got some red flags and you need to deal with that, or we need to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? So that is definitely the number one step, is to stop trauma bonding, is pick up on it like right away and say, hey, this is trauma bonding. This is not healthy, and I want to fix this. Do you want to fix this? Can we fix this? Either they're in or they're out, you know? Next one, number two, is you gotta allow yourself to get uncomfortable. So before I get into number two, I'm going to give you my personal experience that I actually experienced not too long ago, maybe like a few months ago or something like that. On the feelings and the energy of when you first meet somebody romantically, and the feeling of trauma bonding with somebody, and the feeling of meeting somebody in the beginning and you're not trauma bonding with them. I'm not going to give too much detail because I'm sure some of these men are watching my videos. I don't want them to be out there like that publicly, okay? So I had an experience not too long ago where I trauma bonded with somebody. And this happened, if you've been following my videos, you know I practice African traditional religion. I am an initiate. I am a priestess. And I practice Kimbanda. So my personal experience is, my spirits wanted me to recognize this. So this is my personal spiritual awakening that I'm personally going through right now that sucks, but is awesome at the same time because it's healing me, and it's some things that needs to come out. Okay, so I have a history of trauma bonding. I have a history of being abused in the past and stuff like that. So clearly I'm going through an enlightening moment in my life where I'm learning to not get stuck in those cycles anymore with abuse and, you know, ignoring red flags and stuff like that. So I had an experience not too long ago with this guy. I'm not going to say his name, okay? And this is what I learned about trauma bonding, is as soon as I met this guy, we clicked like that, boom. Like as soon as we started talking, it flowed so easily. Even after I seen him and we spoke on the phone, it flowed perfectly. Like there was this, everything about him was like, I love the way he spoke to me. I love the way he just sweet talked to me. I love the way he was just so available to me, and how he would just wanted to just do everything that I wanted somebody to do. You know what I'm saying? And he was so like, he like threw himself at me, and I was like, I was like, oh my God, like it feels, trauma bonding, I'm gonna let you know right now, trauma bonding feels so good. Trauma bonding feels like you're high, and it feels like, especially when it comes to romance, it feels like right away, boom, like, oh my God, this is the one. Boom, I'm gonna take you home with me. You're gonna be my man. Come sit on this couch and be with me forever, baby. And as soon as I realized I was thinking that, right? I was like, oh my God, I just met this dude. Like, where did this come from? How can I feel that way about somebody so fast, right away, right? That's when I realized that's trauma bonding. That is a false idea of love. That is a false idea of being in love with somebody. If you meet somebody, sorry, my internet was showing for a second. If you meet somebody and you feel like you were in love with them within the first day or few days or week or first month, and you meet them and you're like, oh my God, this person is perfect. Like they talk to me perfectly. Their body's perfect. Their outfit's perfect. And there's just everything about them is this is it. This is my boo. Right now, just be it right now. Everything. You don't even have no criticism, nothing to criticize. No, you're perfect. So imperfect, not right. It's wrong. Everything is wrong. I'm just telling you right now. Not saying that they technically have to be perfect and everything, but if you feel like it's like this weird adrenaline. Trauma bonding gives you adrenaline. It's like that because what it does, it fills a void. Like whatever it is that your parents did not give you. This is what I realized. My mom wasn't very emotionally available at all to me. So when I met somebody who gave me everything, I grabbed onto that, you know? So when we're trauma bonding, it's because that person is offering the same pain that they need within themselves. And that pain is the same pain as you. Is the same pain that you are trying to feel within yourself. So that's what I realized when we first meet somebody and we feel that constant like boom, like oh my God, this is it, and it's so comfortable. You can relax, take them home. There's no anxiety. It's just so comfortable. You think they're perfect. Another one. Not worried about a thing, not uncomfortable, so comfortable. Trauma bonding is comfortable. Trauma bonding is exactly that one thing that you do that is so comfortable in your life, and that is why you keep doing it over and over again. And that is exactly why you keep dating the same demon with the different face over and over and over again, because it feels so comfortable. It feels like home. It feels like you know that person and you've been knowing that person your whole life. It feels right. It feels like a little cradle. It feels comforting. That's a red flag you're doing with trauma bonding. And what sucks about that is because that's what you're looking for. You want to feel comfortable. You want to feel safe. You want to feel like it's the same exact comforting feeling that you got when you were growing up, or you're getting the exact feeling that you want to have fulfill all the voids that you did not get in childhood, and someone has finally come around to fill all those voids. All those things your mother didn't give you, somebody came to give all those things to you that your mother never gave you. And then at the end of the day, after things blow up in your face, you realize that exact person that you thought was filling your voids is the mother that's eventually going to abuse you once again because you picked up on that energy. So this is what I realized. When I trauma bonded with this man, oh, he was sexy. I'm going to let you know right now, okay? As soon as I noticed that popped up and I was like, this is it. I'm about to put you in my suitcase. I'm going to move you in right now. Boo, you my man now. Just sit down. As soon as I thought that, I was like, you are dangerous, man. You are dangerous. No, there's something. This is not right. It's a lie. Trauma bonding is a lie. As soon as you feel that feeling, it is a straight up lie. It is not real. You know why it's not real? It is impossible for you to be in love with somebody when you first meet them. It is impossible for you to really love them unconditionally and really love them respectfully when you first meet them. You may have love for them, you may care for them, but to actually really be in love with somebody, or to actually really, really love somebody, healthy love somebody, in the beginning, it is impossible to do that. It takes time. It takes time for you to actually build that up with somebody. You actually meet the secretary in somebody for the first 2 years when you meet somebody. The secretary, as in the person you see at the desk representing the office, the representative. When you're with somebody or when you meet somebody, even if they're friends, you're actually meeting the representative for at least the first 2 years of knowing them. Therefore, if you feel that bond right in the beginning, like, oh, this is it, it ain't right. If you are not uncomfortable at all, if you are not questioning it at all, if you're really so comfortable, you can just chill with them all the time, not worry about nothing, and be like, oh, this is home right here, right now, and not worry about nothing ever, not feel uncomfortable ever, you're trauma bonding. What sucks is because we want to feel comfortable. We want to feel safe. We want to get back in that cycle that fulfills our voids all the time, and we hate being uncomfortable, but then we wonder why we keep getting stuck in a cycle over and over and over again with the same exact spirit, with a different person, and it's woe is me, and we're always a victim, and it's everybody else's fault. It's not everybody else's fault, it is our fault because we want to be comfortable and we don't want to be uncomfortable. So, number 2 is learning to allow yourself to get uncomfortable so you know how to be with somebody who's not constantly going to fill your voids. Not constantly give you the attention and the validation that you always need all the time. Not constantly be that exact person that you've been dating multiple times to make you feel comfortable. Whatever it is, not to do all the things that your daddy didn't do, and he's doing all whatever it is that your daddy didn't do. Be comfortable with somebody who's not always going to be that. Because clearly if someone is feeling all those painful voids, they reflect that pain, which means the pain that they are feeling in you is the pain that they are feeling within themselves, which means as time goes by, it'll blow up in both you guys' face, and that's when fights and arguments and chaos happens in relationships, because you trauma bonded on filling voids that both of you were trying to fill. And the illusion was you actually believed that person could fill that void, and they can't. You actually believe that you could fill their void, and you can't. You can't. The next one is how to not get caught up in trauma bonding is as soon as you feel like you're getting uncomfortable with something, you need to speak on it. As soon as you feel like you're getting stuck in a cycle, you have to pay attention. Like as soon as you see yourself going into a situation, it doesn't even have to be, it could be either a new person you're with, it could even be with somebody that you've been with and you notice something's happening and a cycle starting to begin. It is your job as the aware one to say, hey, light bulb, I'm noticing that we're entering into a cycle and I don't want to be in that cycle. That is your job to correct that issue. It is not your job to avoid it and ignore it and hope maybe one day it'll just solve itself. Because it's not. Because chances are if you're ignoring it and it's continually happening, it's because that person's ignoring it as well. If you want to leave a cycle, and if you don't want to get stuck in cycles, if you don't want to get stuck and wrapped up in trauma bonding, then you need to speak up when you're catching it starting to happen. You're like, okay, I noticed this, we did this 3 times this week. Or I noticed we did this time, this many times this month, or this many times this year. You need to speak up on that. You need to say, hey, I don't want to do that. We need to change up. I notice we're doing the same thing every week. I noticed that we're having the same conversation. I noticed that I keep feeling the same way. And you have to speak up on it. Like, you have to say, and you have to find a way to fix it. You can't just, something that I realized that as a healer, I'm a healer. Something that us healers deal with all the time is people who want to speak up on things, but they don't want to do anything about it. So my question to you is, do you want to be heard or do you want to heal? You can be heard all you want and you can start a conversation all you want, but if you don't make the plans and if you don't make the actions and the steps it takes to heal, then all you are is talk. And you can't expect your life to change. You can't expect anything to change in your life. You could first step is obviously to bring it up and say, hey, I noticed this is a cycle and I want to change it. Now what? That's it? You're just going to talk about it? No, if you're talking about it, it's because it needs to be resolved. The schedule needs to change. The schedule of action, as in whatever it is that y'all keep doing over and over again, needs to change up somehow. You can't run away from it. You can't avoid it. It's going to happen over and over again. You can't jump from relationship to relationship and say, okay, if I can't fix it with this person, or if I'm going to bring it up to this person but not try to fix it, I'm going to jump to the next person who I'm also not either going to not bring it up to, or I am going to bring it up to and not fix it and expect them to fix it all. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I'm saying? If you don't want to be stuck in trauma bonding and cycles, then it is your job to pick up on the red flag as soon as it happens and to take that step to say, hey, I want to change it. How can we change it? And come up either mutually and say, okay, this is what we could do. Or if that person has no ideas, then you could come up with an idea and say, okay, this is what I think we should do. But ignoring it or trying to run away from it and avoiding it and trying to just jump from person to person and not actually fixing it, which means you're going to be stuck in a cycle. So you could actually be stuck in the cycle of not talking about it, like in a traumatic or trauma bonding cycle, and you could jump from that traumatic bonding cycle with that person to the next person, because you're not fixing it. A lot of times people don't want to fix anything. They want to like avoid it and act like it doesn't happen. And then I don't want to avoid it. I don't want to fix it or anything. So I'm just going to go be with the next person. And I'm just going to, hopefully I won't say anything to that person. And we just won't have that bond. If you have trauma inside of you that has not been healed, you cannot run from that. You will attract it in another person. And it will happen to you over and over and over again. And it will not change until you make the step to say, I want to change this. I want to change this habit. So the next time you meet somebody and you notice a cycle, it is your job to say, hey, this is a cycle I know is happening, and this is the steps that I personally want to take to change that cycle so I am not in that cycle with you. And either that person wants to work that out with you or they don't. But it takes you to bring it up, and it takes you to come up with the plan to say, hey, this is how I think we should change this cycle. But not speaking on it and pulling away isn't going to help. And not only speaking on it and hoping the other person's going to fix anything isn't going to help. Or not doing anything and expecting the next person to hopefully be different than the last person isn't going to help either. It takes us. It takes us to speak on it. It takes us to make the plan action to fix the cycle. And it also takes more than one person, whoever the cycle we're with, either that person's going to cooperate or they're not at the end of the day. And that's how you get out of toxic cycles, is you find people around you that's willing to work things out with you, and you step out of the cycle of people who want to just continue the cycle all the time. There are people who just want to continue it over and over and over again. And then there's people who actually want to leave it. So it is your job as a person who wants to change is to be around people who want to grow with you as well. Because at the end of the day, if you're with somebody, if you're hanging out with somebody, or a friend or whatever, and if you have a business partner for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, as long as you find somebody that you could work with, even like in a business setting, that you know that business ain't going to be the same the first year than it's going to be 10 years from now. The economy is going to be different. The city is going to be different. There's going to be new houses built around it. Which means you need to find somebody who's going to be fluent with you to say, okay, how do we fix this? How do we maneuver around this? What do we do? Not a person who wants to remain the same the first year you guys open the business and then think it's going to be okay 10 years from now when the whole entire city is different around the business. You see what I'm saying? So the quality of our life is dictated by the quality of our relationships. Do you know how to leave cycles yourself? Do you know how to find people who can adapt and act the same way as you do and learn how to leave cycles with you? Are you comfortable with doing that? Do you know how to do that? Do you know how to be comfortable with other people who are comfortable with leaving those traumas behind and not getting stuck in cycles around you? It is your frequency. It's your frequency. Therefore, if you're not comfortable with change, then you're going to be around people who aren't comfortable with change. At the end of the day, if you are comfortable with change, then you're going to attract people around you who are comfortable with change, which helps you grow as a person, and you are going to surround yourself with people who also love to grow as people and not stay stagnant and the same all the time. So my next one is number 4. Sometimes what sucks is sometimes you actually do need to walk away. I've had this experience. We've all had this experience many times. No matter how much you try, no matter how much you try to work things out, no matter how much you try to work your way out of cycles, either that person is willing to work on getting rid of those trauma cycles with you, or they're not. Either they want to stay the same and stay stagnant and keep doing the same thing over and over again, or they don't. But it honestly takes you to take that step to find out, like, are you that person that doesn't want to change? Are they that person who doesn't want to change? Are both of you people who don't want to change? You know? And sometimes, sadly to say, sometimes we have to accept it. Sometimes there's people that we associate with that you want to change and you want to grow out of a toxic lifestyle, and people you love very dearly and that are close to your heart don't want to. And sometimes we do have to walk away. And not said necessarily that you have to walk away forever, but sometimes you gotta distance yourself. Sometimes you gotta love people from far away and only take them in small doses. And sometimes you have to accept people for that. It is what it is, you know. But it takes you to do that, you know. Sometimes you have to. I mean, if you're stuck in a traumatic or a trauma bond with somebody, it's only your fault because you're participating at the end of the day. You can't always blame everybody else and say it's that other person's fault. That person's doing this and that person's doing this to me. But if you're participating and you're allowing it and you're not trying to change it, or you are trying to change and you're just not getting the point that they don't want to change with you, then that's your fault at the end of the day. And it sucks that we don't want to own up to that, because a lot of us like to be victims. A lot of us want to feel like it's woe is me, everything happens to me, instead of accepting people for who they are. And sometimes we have to. Sometimes we have to accept this person is who they are. This person's an alcoholic. This person's a drug addict. This person is toxic. All they want to do is fight and argue all the time. Sometimes we have to accept it. You know, you gotta let them go sometimes, and that's sad to say, but sometimes you gotta learn to let go, you know. But it doesn't mean you can't come back. A lot of times we forget that, you know, sometimes you gotta drop people off and come back, drop them off at Lost and Found and come back and pick them up later. Sometimes that's what you gotta do, you know. or not at all, whatever the situation is. Number 5, my last step is you got to spend time to evaluate yourself and why are you trauma bonding? What are you doing that's making you want to trauma bond? What void is that person fulfilling? Or what void is that person not fulfilling that you wish they would fulfill, and you're mad because they're not fulfilling that void and you're taking it out on them? What voids are you looking, or what trauma are you looking for subconsciously in other people and not realizing that that's what you're going after? That that's what you're attracting into your life that's making you comfortable? What is distracting you from your healing process and you're using other people as a distraction? A lot of times trauma bonding is basically a distraction. A lot of times we trauma bond with people because we want them to heal us instead of we heal ourselves. So why are we trauma bonding? So the last step is really spending time with yourself to really evaluate yourself. And if you are trauma bonding, if you are looking for somebody to fill your voids, if you are stuck in a cycle, in a toxic cycle with something you know that you are, you need to really sit back and take the time to sit with yourself, meditate, whatever it is, pray, whatever it is that you do, and ask yourself why. Ask yourself what happened in your childhood, specifically, be very specific, that you're looking for someone else to fill a void in. Maybe you want attention, maybe you want validation, maybe you want to feel wanted, maybe you want to feel needed, maybe you want to be approved, whatever it is, and you're looking for other people who reflect that trauma, who also want that, so therefore they offer it to you in hopes that they'll get it back, you know, stuff like that. Or we are doing that to people, you know. We are loving people who are abusive, because if we could prove to them that they're not abusive and we could heal them, then we'll validate our need to be loved, or we'll validate that we're lovable, that we deserve love. You know. What are we trying to validate in ourselves? You know, what negative information, negativity in our life that we're pushing onto other people to validate our false beliefs? Maybe we don't believe in love. We don't believe that love will last. So therefore we will validate that by pushing people away on purpose. And then we'll try to find people who chase us on purpose to validate that. Or validate that all men are abusive by constantly pushing men to the edge, constantly pushing a man's buttons all the time, disrespecting him, being mean, to validate that all men are abusive. And then we play victim, you know. Constantly pulling away from people. I am a person who has a history of doing that, constantly pulling away from people to validate that I don't deserve love. Constantly being emotionally distant. I have a history of doing that myself. Constantly being emotionally distant to prove that no man will ever love me for me. These are things we have to really evaluate in ourselves. What are things that we do that's toxic, that we're actually reflecting into other people based off our actions to validate false beliefs in our head. False beliefs that we don't deserve to be loved. Love doesn't last. Nobody will love me for me. All men or women are abusive. All men or women are cheaters. Therefore, I will push my partner sexually away to prove that all men or women are cheaters. You know what I'm saying? This is called trauma bonding, trauma responses, trauma reactions. And these are things we need to be mindful of ourselves that we're doing and stop blaming other people. We need to take accountability for that, so we're not stuck in a trauma bond to where we're constantly doing something and seeking somebody to fill that void who will somehow respond or react the way we want them to validate whatever feelings that we have. whether it's them pulling away, whether it's them smothering us more, whatever it is that we do subconsciously to get a reaction out of somebody else, a response out of somebody else, to validate our lies and validate our denial, validate our pain, validate whatever mommy and daddy did to us when we were growing up, validate the pain that our exes caused us, whatever it is that we are not willing to heal, and use other people to validate those reasons. So, not, hold on, I have to note it here. So before I close out, I just want to let you know that to be around people that you don't trauma bond with, and leaving cycles that you're been obviously comfortable doing is very uncomfortable. When you decide that you want to stop trauma bonding, and when you decide that you want to stop being stuck in toxic cycles that you know is not good for you, you're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be anxious. You're going to get insecure. Because being around people who aren't there filling your voids, it's going to make you doubt yourself. It's going to make you feel like, am I really lovable? Am I enough? Am I this? Whatever. Because there's not people around you to constantly fill those voids, because you're ending cycles. And you're going to be uncomfortable, and it's not going to be easy. And the reason why a lot of people can't leave cycles, and the reason why a lot of people can't stop trauma bonding, is because people don't want to be uncomfortable. We want to be comfortable. We want somebody to constantly fill our voice, to constantly validate our lies, validate denial within ourselves, validate our addictions, validate our bad habits. If anyone's constantly validating you all the time, then you're trauma bonding. You're trauma bonding, and that actually means that person does the same thing as you, and that's the only reason why they're trauma, and that's the only reason why they're validating it, is because they do the same crap. They're doing the same thing. So when you decide to stop cycles, and when you decide to stop trauma bonding with people, it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to give you a lot of anxiety, and might even give you those spurts and moments of depression and anger and stuff like that, because you would literally need to go through a purging time, a time to let go and purge all the things that you've been so attached to and so in love with and so wanting of. And when those things that you want and needed, or you thought you needed when you really don't, are being pulled away from you, you start to feel even a little incomplete. You start to even feel like there's something maybe missing. You start to even feel like that maybe there's something wrong with you. Maybe you have mental issues or whatever like that. But then if you don't allow the discomfort in yourself, what you do is bounce back to the comfortable feeling of repeating the cycle again. It's so comfortable. Yes, trauma bonding could feel so beautiful sometimes. So great, so comfortable. I know. I get it. But you gotta let yourself get uncomfortable. You gotta let yourself deal with yourself. When you go through the cycle, when somebody else is triggering that within yourself, you need to sit with yourself and realize you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It is you that needs to do that. It is you that needs to stop sitting in cycles. It is you that needs to stop sitting in traumas and using other people to validate your trauma, or stop getting upset when somebody else can validate your trauma, or whatever it is. You know, we get like separation anxiety. You will get separation anxiety. Is separating from characteristics and other people that you're used to, and learning to flow with the different characteristics of people around you that you're not used to. You will get separation anxiety from that, and it's very common, because you're gonna want to start to panic and want to bounce back to those demons that you love to bond with, those demons that were there to love you so well, give you all the attention that you want. It feels so good, so high, that dopamine high, right? It's not good for you. So uncomfortable. It is always good to find support, but I'm going to let you know right now, do not find support from a person who you're trauma bonding with. Do not find support from a person who likes trauma bonding themselves. Do not find support from a person who is going to validate your pain and try to talk constant shit about another person that doesn't reflect their personal trauma bonding, because they don't understand what it means to be around people who don't fill voids. So before I get off this video, this is my last step. When you are going through change and you are trying to leave a cycle, it might be better for you to either talk to a professional, either a spiritual life coach, a priest or priestess, a psychologist, anybody, a guru, whatever it is, and not to speak to personal friends and family who has not reached that point. Because what they're going to do is they're going to trauma bond with you and try to get you, oh girl, yo, whatever, yo, you don't need to deal with that fool, whatever. He is insecure, he does that, or he does that, or she does that, or whatever. You don't need to do, no, you don't need to do that, it's stupid or whatever. They are stuck in a cycle. People who are not trying to leave their cycles are clearly stuck in their cycles, and they're going to give you the advice as from a perspective of being in a cycle. So my last point is, please do not ask advice from anybody who refuses to leave their cycle. Do not ask advice from anybody who depends their happiness on trauma bonding. Anybody who is depending their happiness and their voids on trauma bonding with other people is not a person you should be asking advice from. Please go to a guru, a priest, a priestess, an iya, a tata, a yaya, a psychologist, counselor, whatever. Anybody that is going to give you good advice. Do not ask advice from another person who is not there yet. That you know who they are. You know what's going on with their life. You know the type of advice they're going to give you. Do not ask advice from anybody who don't know what they're talking about. I don't care how much you think they love and support you. I don't care. If you know they ain't perfect, if you know that they have no right to be giving anyone life advice because you're looking at their life, do not ask them for advice. Do not go to them, because what they're going to do is embed trauma bonding and cycles back into your head. When you're trying to leave that cycle, you're trying to detach from trauma bonding, you're trying to change your cycles, and you're going to go ask advice from somebody who is continually in their cycle and they can't get out, continually with trauma, continually identifying their personality with trauma. Anybody who thinks that they are their trauma, anybody who thinks that they are their pain, and their personality is their pain, and their personality is their trauma, and their personality is their bad experiences, is a trauma bonded person. Do not ask advice from anybody who is trauma bonding even with their self. If you are trauma bonding with yourself, that means that you think you are your depression. You think that all the drama and the trauma that happened in your life makes you who you are, and that's who you should be. You think that your drug addiction or your alcoholism is you. You think that's who you are. If you actually think all your broken relationships that you've been through and been with is who you are, then you're trauma bonding with yourself. And you need to get out of that. So my next video is going to be on leaving cycles, which is going to go great with this video. How to leave toxic cycles in your life. So if you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and follow me on YouTube at Mind of Ro. And I hope all of you are having a drama-free day. Ankh Uja Seneb, Namaste, Odabo, peace.